Phoenix Suns got their first taste of their new traded players on Saturday against the Golden State Warriors. As the stretch run hits, should the Phoenix Suns be starting Royce O'Neale? Do we trust their new rotation? And what can we learn about the strategy of maxes and minimums when it comes to roster building? Let's go.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We are back. This is Locked On Phoenix Suns. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, and I'm your host, Brendon Kleen, a credentialed media member covering the Suns for the past 7 seasons, a writer at Suns.com, and the host of the Just Basketball Show, wherever you get your podcasts. A big thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to start off your Tuesday. Wherever you are finding us, whenever you are finding us, do not forget to hit that follow or subscribe button. We're free and available everywhere, including YouTube. When you hit that button, you get a new show in your feed every single Monday through Friday, where you can become an everydayer and get locked onto the Phoenix Suns all season long right here with this show. Today's episode brought to you by Prize Picks, the easiest, most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. Use the code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Joining us here on this Tuesday edition of the show, as he does every week, is Brendon Dueñas. He is a writer over at Bright Side of the Sun. Brendon, I don't know if you were as hyped up on that Saturday night game as I was. I nerded out about it a little bit on Sunday morning for the people listening and watching already, but I think one of the things that's worth talking a little bit more about is the rotation. Now that Royce O'Neale is fully installed and has made his debut for this team, they didn't maybe get the huge swing that some fans might have wanted, whether that's Miles Bridges or somebody even better if you convince yourself of that. But they have some buyout options. There's still guys left over after these trades that could get a call. How are you feeling about the now 10-man rotation that the Suns rolled out in that game and seems to be what they'll roll out for the foreseeable future?
Yeah, so I think the rotation is still to be determined based off the buyout market for sure, because like they didn't send out 4 players in that deal without something up their sleeve, you would think, and we'll touch more on that, the players they got rid of later in the show. But I think right now, as far as what they have, I feel pretty comfortable with that rotation. I think it'll be very matchup dependent, and Okogie was, anytime you're playing a quick guard like Steph and you're trying to fight through screens and stuff like that, Okogie's going to be needed in matchups like that. So it didn't shock me that he got, he was added to the rotation there. And then Bull's kind of the wild card too on the other end, where there's going to be some games where he could make sense, other games where we might not see him. And yeah, I think even David Roddy, like I think that there's a reason they traded for him, and you could argue he's probably better than half the people they shipped out in that trade. So, or at least has a chance to be. So that's someone I think they're definitely going to invest in and give some time, at least give a chance to make a case to make the rotation. But they're not going to, Royce played 11 minutes. Like they're not going to like rush these guys into like crazy roles right off the bat. So I think we'll definitely see some more Roddy, some more experimenting, and the rotation's never set with this team. Even with this move kind of settling some things, it's also opens the door for some more experiments from Vogel, and I think we'll continue to see that. And then the buyout market's obviously going to impact things as well. So it's starting to settle in, but at the same time, it's definitely not.
I want to say that it's probably going to be these 10 guys. Outside of a buyout, and we'll get to that in a second. But I just don't think that if you're at game, it's about to be 54 on Tuesday, and you don't even feel good enough about Nasir Little to give him any minutes. I have a hard time imagining that he's going to break through. I personally view David Roddy as, let's see what he looks like almost a glorified two-way player as far as on the court. Let's see what he can do. Like, they go sign Teo Maledon, and we haven't even seen him in a game outside of garbage time the other night. I think it's going to be like that personally. I could be wrong. I think there's things he could do if he really hits, but I wouldn't expect to see him anytime soon. And to me, it's like Darius Baisley last year maybe, or something like that. And I think the only thing that worries me, if I'm looking at this rotation, that I don't trust about it, is certain matchups where the opponent just has a ton of size. And especially the Nuggets. Like, I hate to reduce it down to that, but that's the team that eliminated this Suns team last year, and that's obviously, I think, going to be the favorite heading into the playoffs no matter what the seeding looks like. And to me, it's just too easy for me to imagine a game where Nurkic gets a couple of early fouls. I don't really think Eubanks stands much of a shot to get Jokic off of his spots or make him uncomfortable really at all. And then you really quickly get to, like, man, is there even an answer? It's just so much is relying on Nurkic to be effective, to stay healthy, to not get into foul trouble. And that really worries me, but there's not really anybody on the buyout market that's going to solve that.
Yeah, and to your point, also, like, Jokic, there's not too many people that can make him uncomfortable in the first place. But if you're burning through bodies and he's getting them in foul trouble, it's definitely going to be a problem. So I think the size is definitely one of my biggest concerns as well. I do disagree a little bit in terms of David Roddy. I think they brought him in, like, he will play. It's a matter of injuries. Like, I think right now this is their team at quote unquote full strength. I think they're gonna, on nights where like Booker or Beal or even Durant's out, that bench is pretty thin right now, like bearing a couple additions. So I think that's something to factor in, where second of back-to-backs, even garbage time, whatever, like, I think he's going to get a chance to come in and play. And I don't know if it's going to go well or not. That's to be determined, but I think he will get a shot and get to make a case for that rotation spot. And I think right now, same with Royce O'Neale, I think he's going to be playing a lot closer to 30 minutes a game than, like, the 10 to 15 he got in that opening night. So, but yeah, overall, I think there's definitely still some holes you could poke at with this team, but you could say that about pretty much any team outside of maybe Denver and a healthy Clippers team in the West. So now it's just about hoping you can get in the playoffs healthy, and that's the main goal. And Vogel's going to keep cracking down on this rotation, and I feel like it's the same thing every week. We're just like, do you trust this rotation? Is it locked in? How do you feel about this guy? And then just the next week, it's just a different group we're talking about. So I give up at this point.
But it has been this group for a while now, right? I mean, you add O'Neale into it, but for a while, I guess, it was Bates Diop was in there for a bit, but really we've seen it be when Bull, and then Bull was out, but like when all these guys have been healthy, it's been Gordon, Bull, Okogie, and Eubanks for a bit now. And so let me ask you this from the Roddy standpoint. Mm-hmm. Last season, we'll use Terrence Ross as an example. He's a buyout guy, obviously different type of player completely, but joined the team around the same time. He played 69 minutes in the playoffs across 6 games. Does David Roddy play more or less than, let's say, 70 minutes in this year's postseason?
Oh God, I hope less.
Okay, that's my point.
Yes, I think regular season, I think he'll get a chance to audition, and like I said, it's really going to come down to just health. That's the main thing. Is like they just don't have that depth. Like if someone's out, it's going to be him or Little. That's going to pretty much be thrown in the rotation, and we know that this team's not been the healthiest all year. So I think they kind of factored that in. Then he was a part of that trade for a reason. Like they wanted to bring in someone they could trust to at least eat some minutes if they need to, and I think we will see that. But how many minutes, who knows?
Okay, last thing here. Is there anybody left on the buyout market, not that has necessarily been bought out, but who's sort of in the rumor mill, that you like the most for this team?
I would like Otto Porter or Thad Young. Those are kind of the two names that pop up. For me, I think just Thad's ability to play small ball 5 with Durant and some of his playmaking. He could do a little bit off the dribble, top of the key. Against in those lineups against the Clippers, where you're going to need a little more size for those wings. Otto Porter is another name, size and shooting. Just guys like that are versatile. But yeah, there's not really, like you said earlier, there's not really too many guys that are just going to come in and change the entire dynamic of the team. But there's guys that can help.
So I sent this to Locked On Suns Insider subscribers, which you can sign up for at joinsubtext.com or click the link in the show description below. I send out little observations, news, thoughts. Today it was my message with Sean Woodley, who hosts Locked On Raptors, and I asked him over the weekend, how delusional am I to think Otto or Thad could play like 10 minutes in the playoffs for the Suns? And his response was, Otto seems maybe just physically broken and wasn't very effective in the few games he did play. Thad was super fun over the last month or so as a small ball 5. I think on that Suns team, though, his offensive wheel greasing is probably less valuable, and he did get cooked trying to be the last line of defense at the rim. So I don't think the Suns would have to play him at center necessarily, because if he's in those types of lineups, most likely that's with Durant, so it wouldn't look as bad maybe as it does with Toronto. I think that is better than Otto at this point in their careers, but I think what the Suns need is probably closer to what Porter was for like that Warriors team from a defensive standpoint. So I wouldn't hate either one, but I think you just said, Brandon, if they get either one of those guys, let's say this week, we would be recording next week going, will they play more or less than 70 minutes like Terrence Ross did, right? Like it would be the same exact question. So I don't think it's going to be a difference maker.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say that's pretty much what the buyout market is, right? It's just trying to like a game of convincing yourself that this guy will work for you, even though it didn't work for the other team. And it's just like each team will just
they got cut for a reason.
Through. Exactly. So you just kind of have to hope the right situation, the right change of scenery, maybe the right role, and guys come in ready to play, and maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. But I think you just got to try to find the best fit possible. So.
Yeah, my vote is still for DeLon Wright. I think he is somebody who I could see playing 10 minutes. He overlaps a little with Okogie, but as insurance there and somebody where if the ground falls out from underneath of Okogie on offense like it has in the past, you have a similar player in a role you really need, even if I think defensively Wright is like maybe a B or a B-. Okogie's like an A, but that's still a good thing to have two of, where now Goodwin's gone and everything else. I think that they could use that and maybe re-sign Wright, frankly, in the offseason. But let's talk about Royce O'Neale, who is on this team, who is in the rotation, and will make this team better. Let's talk about just how much he will play, just how much he can make them better next. First, today's show brought to you by Prize Picks, the best place to play daily fantasy sports because it is not you versus a league, an opponent, a pool, or anything like that. It is instead you versus the Prize Picks player projections. And right now, it's demon time on Prize Picks, meaning you can now win up to 100 times your money with as few as 4 correct picks, allowing you to turn $10 into $1,000 just like that. Demons and Goblins are the newest, most exciting way to play at Prize Picks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts within the app. And again, you can win up to 100 times your money with as few as 4 correct picks. In addition, quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types all make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA right now and use the code LockedOnNBA when you make your first deposit to get it matched up to $100. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LockedOnNBA for a first deposit match up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Keeping the show rolling here, let's talk about Royce O'Neale, Brandon. I believe the way I put it, I can't remember if I said this going into the game or actually as an observation after the game, but to me, it's more of the same. And that's not a bad thing. I don't mean that to say that he is unnecessary or useless. I just mean he doesn't change the team. He doesn't add some wholly new dimension, but he fits right into what they want to do, and he provides a little more size. And I think I know how you feel because you mentioned minutes per game total in the last segment that would indicate a pretty huge role. But do you think we might see this guy start games, whether it's in the regular season or at some point in the playoffs? Because I think that's where my mind goes immediately. If you're really going to maximize what he brings, I think putting him out there with the starters and allowing him to match up with certain guys on opposing teams is probably the best way to do it.
Yes, I do. I think him starting makes sense. That doesn't mean I think he's better than Grayson Allen. It's just the Jay Crowder, Cam Johnson 2.0, pretty much all over again, just in a different life form. So I think obviously Grayson, like who you close out with, will probably matter a lot more, and especially come playoff time, it's so matchup dependent that we've gone over this. Like starting doesn't necessarily mean that's how you're going to close, and vice versa. So I think, but giving Royce as many minutes with the starters, I think makes sense. While also giving Grayson some freedom in the second unit where him and Gordon can kind of serve as the playmakers and scorers with one of the big three alongside them. I think it makes a lot of sense to balance out the bench. But at the same time, like I think with what you said, how you kick things off, like Royce kind of fits in without changing too much. So I think you could plug him in the bench or in a starting role, and it's not going to really impact how they play too much. He just kind of, that's one of the reasons I like that fit, just because of how versatile and seamless the fit's going to be. Like he doesn't need the ball. He's just going to play his role. And we saw some flashes defensively against the Warriors where he was being disruptive, fighting over screens, doing little things that he does. But yeah, I think I would probably start him, try to get him as many minutes as you can with the big three and let Grayson cook off the bench. I think it just, obviously fans are going to say like, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But are we sure this is even fixed yet? Like I still think this team has a lot more potential, and they're still figuring things out.
I mean, to me, the biggest thing I think we saw on Saturday, if you're talking about this debate between not just O'Neale and Allen, but is it maximized right now? What's the best combos? Everything else was Grayson's poor performance, much more than O'Neale looking awesome or anything else. I think if I'm imagining a not so unlikely scenario where, for all we know, the Suns could just play the Warriors in the first round, and that really could have been a playoff preview. You know, the seeding is so jumbled right now. So the way that I think Grayson struggles at times against certain defensive matchups would already lead me to be thinking, what else can we try? And again, I agree with you. It's not a hating on Grayson Allen thing. I think he's exceeded expectations and then some this year. And I think against certain guys, like I think he did decent. This might not be a popular opinion, or it might sound stupid. I think he did a decent job against Luka on Christmas in a game where Luka put up like 50 and 15. I think Grayson actually executed what was supposed to be done as the point of attack primary guy. I think the other stuff is what broke down, and there will be games like that. But yeah, I would not be surprised at all if there's some sort of injury opportunity or something comes up along the course of the regular season where Royce gets into that starting lineup, and then maybe he never says goodbye to it. To me, though, looking forward into a postseason situation, obviously the ripple effect of that is it puts a lot of pressure on your two-star guards to be better defensively than they have been, because they have to, like, O'Neale and Allen are not the same size. They're not the same type of guy. So you're talking about against the Nuggets, all of a sudden Booker or Beal is guarding Jamal Murray, Anthony Edwards. I guess the Thunder are a little different because Shea's big and maybe O'Neale could guard him. But that would worry me if for no other reason than a wear and tear standpoint and what you're asking those two guys to do. So there's not an awesome answer, which leads me to what I wanted to throw back your way is I would not be surprised, knowing Vogel and knowing all the ripple effects I just brought up, if Okogie ends up starting way more playoff games than we're realizing right now. Offensive issues kind of be damned, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, especially if they match up with a team like the Warriors or a team where you're going to need that point of attack desperately, and there's a lot of those teams in the West. So I think Okogie is definitely going to be needed, but how long and how much is he going to hurt you offensively? I think Vogel will probably have a quick leash on him if he does that, to where if he's impacting the flow of the offense, he'll probably pull him real quick. And hey, you got Grayson and Royce off the bench, and you got some options. But I think to your point, also just like the whole foul trouble thing, like if one of your bigs gets in foul trouble, Royce is probably the guy you're going to bring in and have maybe Durant play some small ball five against some of those teams that go a little bit smaller. You could kind of shift the matchup in your favor a little bit by doing that. So I think there's some creativity you could do with bringing both Royce and Allen off the bench. But again, I in a perfect world, Royce just comes in, he's hitting corner threes, he's playing his role, and I think he takes the starting spot, and Grayson just helps elevate the bench and still plays 30 plus minutes. Like, we're not sitting here saying he's going to be like relegated. It's not a punishment. It's just more so just trying to find the best balance possible for the roster.
Yeah. So the one negative here, just to give some numbers: Booker, Beal, Durant, Okogie as a 4-man unit, strangely, has only played 21 minutes. So my theory here might already have some cracks in it. But even worse than that, they're minus 9.4 per 100 possessions. With the three guys on, big three on, Okogie off, they are plus 12.8 per 100 possessions. So, and what's crazy is the defensive rating with Okogie on with those guys, or those three on and him off, is almost identical. So he has not really made a dent with those three guys out there. Joining them or not joining them, he hasn't really been able to make a difference. I think a lot of the stuff with the defensive rating with him is, especially those early season lineups where him and Goodwin were on the court together, or just very defensive heavy lineups that were able to shut the door, and those kind of pumped Okogie's numbers up a little bit. On the other hand, I will throw out those same big 3 plus, big 3 minus with Grayson Allen, where, of course, this page is going to take a while to load. The numbers have obviously been awesome. The offense is off the charts, and I don't know. Sometimes I just look at it and I'm like, are we all just needing to face a little bit of reality and understand that this team might not be able to stop like anybody come playoff time, and that just might be the deal? We'll get to those. Those numbers are more out there. I've talked about them plenty. So let's close out the show talking about the minimum signings, 4 of which got traded for on deadline day for Roddy and for O'Neale. And was this avoidable? Did the Suns pick the wrong guys? What does it mean for next summer when they may have to do some of the same stuff? We'll get into all of that next. First, today's show brought to you by Betterhelp, bringing therapy straight to you, because sometimes we all need the opportunity to get things off of our chests, big or small. Certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that all out, especially to someone that is unbiased about your life. So today, let's talk about how we really feel about something. Okay. How do I really feel? How do I really feel about the fact that Matt Ishbia turned this entire roster over? I don't love it. It made the team a little less relatable. It made covering the team a little more chaotic, and you really can't say no to anything, and it always sort of feels like a churn. But there's winning. That can be nice. Good and bad. Therapy can be different for everybody. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, but it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It is designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. You just fill out a questionnaire, get matched to somebody that's right for you. You can switch therapists as needed. And again, right from the comfort of your own home, your own office, whatever you might need. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. All right, Brandon, let's close out the show here. So the Suns did not have much of a choice after the Bradley Beal trade about whether they were going to go for minimum guys. That was all that they could sign, and I think a lot of us felt pretty good about the players that they were able to go out and get. But when you look up at the fact that Keita Bates-Diop and Yuta Watanabe, even Jordan Goodwin, who they traded for, did not end up amounting to anything, what do you think was the mistake there? Was it the players? Was it just a matter of time and this trade was the end game all along, and maybe the mistake was us getting excited about those guys in the first place. Where do you land on it?
Yeah, probably what you just said, just getting excited about these guys in the first place. And look, I think, just hindsight included, I thought they did a great job this offseason with what they had, and you got to take shots on guys that you think can break out, and just hope that, out of the 6 or 7 or 8 guys you bring in, maybe 2 of them stick to the rotation, and then once you realize what you got, you cut ties quick, and they did that. So kudos to them for pulling the plug and not extending it longer than it needed to be. I thought Utah was going to be a great fit. I was wrong on that one. He just couldn't really get in a rhythm. Never, with the shots not falling, it's tough to play him. It's like if Josh Okogie's not defending, you can't play him. And that's what Utah was supposed to bring, was the shooting, and he couldn't hit shots. And Bates Diop was super inconsistent. Metu was another guy that showed some really nice flashes, but just couldn't bring it all together. And look, that's the reason they signed for minimums, was for a lot of these reasons. So I think, at the end of the day, it's kind of like the buyout market, where you're going to hope you could turn these guys around, but there's a reason they're there. So I think temper expectations this upcoming summer when they do the same thing all over again, and just kind of hope that a couple of the guys they signed pan out, because it's such a crapshoot, and it's tough to, especially this season without the stars being healthy early. I feel like that kind of threw the rotation off so much, and it was hard to evaluate some of these guys like the way you'd want to. But at the same time, like I said, I think they did a great job of taking a swing. It's not always going to work, and cut the ties, move on, and now onto the buyout market and do it all over again, hopefully with more trusted veterans or maybe someone unexpected that falls in their laps. You never know. So overall, was it a failure? Sure, but the stakes were so small in terms of what, these are minimum guys. You didn't really give up a ton for any of these players, so just got to live with it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly how I feel. I think you can look at who else got signed for minimum deals and convince yourself that, hey, next year maybe they get a little luckier. But I would say obviously Gordon was, and that's not luck, that's salesmanship, honestly.
That's what the Bradley Beal and Kevin Durant trades do, is it put you in a position to get guys like that. So
absolutely. And I would even say probably the Bull thing is the superstar effect to a degree as well, because his relationship with Durant, whatever it was, he seems to be playing more like a team NBA real basketball player than ever in his life, really. So those are 2 hits, and there's other ones too around the league. I look at Trendon Watford. I think he's had a decent season in Brooklyn as just a depth forward. There's guys, Lonnie Walker. Honestly, a lot of them are Brooklyn. Dennis Smith Jr. was also. So those are all 3 from the same team. Dario Saric, obviously, fit-wise, made a lot of sense for the Warriors, but Kelly Oubre, another guy Suns fans will remember. Derek Jones is playing really well for Dallas. So I don't think it's hopeless, but I think it's a really difficult way to build a roster, and I think the Suns realize that in a variety of ways. But honestly, I threw this topic out there partially because the Suns are kind of already pivoting away from it, Brandon, because next year they'll be able to, if Okogie declines his player option, they have his early bird rights now, not just his non-bird rights, so they can give him a $5 million deal if they want to, starting at $5 million. I'm not saying they will, but they can. They now have Roddy, who's making a little more than the bottom of the barrel because he was a first-round pick. So next season, he's at 2.8. The following season, he's at 4.8. Those are tradable salaries. They kept Nasir Little. They'll probably look to re-sign Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neale. So there's a part of it that may really end up just being a one-year problem. And you could look up next season and everybody playing for the Suns, including the big 3, Nurkic, and their whole bench, could be guys who actually aren't even on minimums at all. So I think it might end. First-round pick too, yeah. So maybe this was just a really bad 4 months we all had to live through.
No, that's a great point. And those contracts, those salaries are very important too. Those bumps, just because they can't aggregate salaries next year, being in the second apron. So the margin for some of these trades are going to be very thin. So having more tradable contracts, keeping Little's contract as well is pretty important. I thought just kind of whether he plays or not, just having someone you could potentially throw in a trade in a straight up deal or something with that pick. So yeah, I think it'll be a lot more feasible to hit on one of these minimum guys where if you're relying on like 5 or 6 of them, it's just going to feel like a lot of misses. But if you're just bringing in a few guys back into the bench and the rest of your rotation's almost like pre-built, like you said, with Royce and Allen and Roddy and all these other guys and Kogi as well, like all of a sudden you have way less roster spots to fill out. And I think hopefully they'll take the draft serious this year, because someone like Kamara, for example, was a hit and he's gone. So, but it just shows there's so many young guys around the league that are making impacts. So if they can find someone useful in the first round and get a cheap playable contract, like that's huge. So I think, or if they use it in a package, it's one of their last desirable assets at this point. So even though it is a quote unquote weak draft, but look, that's usually when you find those steals in the first round or late first round.
Exactly.
So,
it's weak for the teams at the top. If all you need is like an eighth man as a good team, then you're happy with a weak draft, because that just means beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But you tweeted this, and that's where I actually wanted to close, that you really want the Suns to prioritize the draft this year and actually take somebody with it won't be their first round pick. It'll probably be, no, I think they'll keep their own, right? Because nobody will swap with them. So I think what they did at the deadline by keeping Little, as well as the fact that they'll have O'Neale and Allen, as well as the fact that they won't be able to combine players anymore, to me, made it more likely that they will be trading their first-round pick. I would be I know of the importance. You and I have been screaming about it for years, about James Jones and the missed opportunities, and I am in full support. I'm not even saying what they should or shouldn't do. I'm mostly guessing what they will do, and I would be very surprised if they made a pick because of how they set themselves up. And that pick combined with one of these salaries might be the best opportunity to upgrade for next year's roster that they have.
Oh, yeah. I completely agree with that. I think their chips are already pushed in at this point, so it's a matter of who becomes available. If it makes sense to throw out like one of these trades together and they're in win now mode, they have Kevin Durant, you're trying to win a championship, I get it. Like they're probably going to try to cash in on that the best way they can, but at the same time you have to look at even a team like Denver with some of their younger guys making impacts. Like you could do both. Like it doesn't have to be as one-sided as I feel like this entire regime has been. But at the same time, like if the right role player comes along, you could improve your bench or get someone that could help you win games. Like I get it. At the same time, like if they don't, if you could hit on that pick, like it's huge. So it's a tough position to be in, and I think you could even maybe try to flip that into more assets, like grab 3 second-rounders for it or something, or just I don't know. They're pretty limited on what they can do. So I think there's a lot of directions they can go. But if I had to put money on it, I would say that pick's already gone. Just it belongs to someone else. It's done.
Yeah. Don't get attached, anybody. But yeah, look, they can trade back. They can do all sorts of different things, and I think a lot of it will ride on how they perform in the postseason this year. If you win a championship, it's a lot easier to say, "Hey, take a player," patience, right? Don't go crazy. But we're a long way from there. But that will wrap us up for the day. More to come on Tuesday post game after Suns Kings national TV. Always fun matchups between those two. So keep it right here. Hit follow, subscribe if you haven't already. Get that show in your feed tonight, and I will catch you guys then.